I was a sculptor, but then again, no. Or a man who makes potions in a traveling show. I know it's not much, but it's the best I can do. My gift is my song, and this one's for you. And you can tell everybody this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is while you're in the world. How wonderful now we can live in a Web3 metaverse. Well, that was Elton John's Your Song, which happens to be the favorite song of my next guest, Idon Liu, who is the Chief Blockchain Officer at Pentagon Games. So, let's move on to the conversation. Whose game is it anyway? So, welcome to my show, Idon, and let the games begin.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me, Thomas. And I think subsequently we met quite a few other places. I know we definitely met in Dubai, and just traveling a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought, Idon, just to get our conversation started, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what has been the journey of Pentagon Games so far.
Yeah, definitely. So we as Pentagon Games belong to consolidated multiple Web3 branding as well as gaming studio together. And more recently, we also established an AI team, actually almost a year and a half now. Okay. So we really believe in the convergence of four major things, which is video games into a metaverse. And that is still powered by definitely Web3, but now integrating a lot of AI. We think AI is a major differentiator that's now bringing, metaverses for video games, a lot of different content aggregating all together. So we happen to be working on all four pillars, and we think that's going to be a major change. But of course, foundationally, throughout the past half a decade or so, like Web3 for us has been core, and we believe that's going to be the main foundation, which means everyone moving from Web 2 and really embracing Web 3.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. I think it's really exciting to get an understanding of the four pillars and about how futuristic Pentagon Games is actually planning to be. But I thought I'll just take a pause here, Idon, and then I've been looking at some of the industry reports by BGA, and there was a recent one by Helica and Pantera Capital, and so on and so forth. And a couple of things that are standing out is that there's been a huge investment now in Web3. I think that's starting to pick up again. And I'm told the number is something like 2.3 billion that got invested last year in Web3 projects. Likewise, a huge amount of valuation of gaming airdrops, which I'm told is upwards of 500 million last year. And, thirdly, we are clearly seeing a lot of the Web2, large gaming studios now making an entry into Web3 with some very serious intent. And further, there is a lot of infrastructure getting set up, right? I mean, you have Immutable X, and you have so many others who are now creating platforms, which makes it much easier for creators to onboard with a lot of tools available. So they can just focus on the game part of it, and everything else, including access to players and so on, is really provided by the platform. So clearly we're in a very exciting phase. And therefore, many people say that in the not too distant future, I think the terminology of Web3 and Web2 will converge, and we will just talk about gaming and not really Web3 or Web2, right? Therefore, this business is exciting. It's growing very fast, super competitive. And therefore, I'm really curious to know, given the space of growth that's happening in Web3 gaming, how is Pentagon Games differentiating itself?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. So I think it's something that we've been looking at. It's not, I would say, we didn't just came out of, one day we're going to do this. Our team has been building in the Web3 space since 2017. Our very first game and IP is a fully on-chain game on Ethereum. So which means everyone was paying something like 0.0002 to 0.005 ETH per transaction and spending like 1,000 transactions when ETH was still like less than $100. But of course now, that's no longer possible. But and over the years, during the first scaling cycle, Polygon and BSC came out. So that's why we're like, okay, that makes sense. And then of course the subsequent cycle, there's a play to earn cycle, there's a metaverse cycle. So having through all of this cycle, we really see that it does comes in waves. So which means that we are still building some foundational tech. Like some people come to me and say, NFT is dead. Look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, like Azuki, like the biggest NFT, out there is still, not worth anything. But I think for us, it's fundamentally really embracing and understanding the core technology, which is what exactly does NFT bring to the space? Although you may have the investment sentiment that's down, but I think if you look at it, is foundationally NFT bring immortality, or that essentially the collections are now immutable. Which means what it really means is you can now take a digital picture and now make it a real life collectible because you have the forever history on the blockchain. So it's really the first time I would say it's even better than collecting a collectible card. Because if you have a collectible baseball card, I may do a very good photocopy, whatever. Most people won't even be able to tell it's a copy. But however, on a blockchain, everyone can, with a little bit of skill set or understanding, able to verify to say, this was created at a certain time. So I think the property of the blockchain is so powerful, and that over time we look at each thing to say, okay, what are we going to invest in? And it's not just go single cycle hype, but will last in multiple cycles. So I think the differentiator for us is we invested in a whole bunch of technology companies. In the first cycle, we did invested in the original staff of Polygon. Later on, we invested in multiple other major chains like Avalanche, and the last cycle we invested in something called Oasis Games. But when during the last cycle, we also saw almost the last two cycles, we saw a lot of bridges getting hacked. So we started investing in bridges and also just adjacent technology that we work with. So of course, when we do that, we are both adopting that technology as well as using it. So I think overall, that makes a lot of sense, because all of them, I would say 90% of them, it comes back in fruition, which means stuff that we work with, that work doesn't just last one cycle. So I think that kept us keep going and knowing where we're investing. Just one last thing is, so other than the blockchain stuff, we really then pivot into during the 2 cycle goal, there was the metaverse cycle. We don't think that's going away, because we definitely seen, not just in the Web3 industry, even in Web2, there is a lot more AR, VR adoption. We're talking to a lot of real estate companies, including the ones that we're working with directly, not yet announced, is that a lot of people come to say, hey, before I sell my house, I want to create a VR experience for my pre-sold houses, and I would like that to be interactive. So we do see not just Web3, but there's several other pillars of technology which we're investing a lot, which is the metaverse, virtual creation of worlds, enabling that to experiences for brands. The Web3 portion, and of course AI, which I don't want to talk too much about because I think we all know AI really took a major adoption the past a year and a half to 2.
Right. No, I think that's wonderful, and I think I really like what you said about investing in technology to be able to last multiple cycles, because that's really the key, because everything seems cyclical. So a lot of people are tending to do things for a particular cycle and then trying to monetize their business for that. But I really like your vision about investing in technology for the future, so that you're future proof And how do you make NFTs, metaverse, all that continue to be relevant as you march forward as far as Web3 is concerned? But having said that, Idon, I think I've been talking to a lot of gaming founders and creators in recent times, and one of the big challenges that they have is that what is a chain that they would like to adopt? And clearly, because the decision of your blockchain is, I think, very critical to the success of a Web3 gaming studio. And today there are a lot of options there. You have layer ones, which are EVM, you have non-EVM layer ones, you have the mushrooming of layer twos, and now you have a whole lot of these custom chains like roll-ups, app chains. You have specialized like blockchains like Scale Games and Saga and a host of the others. So I think creators are spoiled for choices, but it also leads to a lot of confusion, right? In terms of what decision should I make as far as a chain is concerned. So really, Idon, what would be your guidance to a gaming company which is looking to select a chain? What are the criteria that they should look for?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. I just want to mention, just to reiterate the problem statement, not other than the L1, L2, L3, there's also ones that look like the blockchain, but it's actually not. So which means after lots of this, like, hey, we have this blockchain. After you look at it, you just have an API. And where's the blockchain? Do you have an Explorer? So there's even ones which is even actually a centralized solution. They call it the Cell blockchain. So yeah, I think there's a fundamentally quite a few things here. But because we started with our own, from scaling from Ethereum, like the first smart contract, to something like Polygon BSC, then later on to, I would say on the third cycle of chains, which you started really have guys like Avalanche, KL, Solana was also the big one. And then migrates of other non-EVM chain, like, I think the other one big one was like Flow blockchain was huge. Then obviously there's also Side one, which is kind of not. But I would say fundamentally, number one is your developer, which means the developer that you're able to onboard, what do they program with, right? Do they know Rust? What are they on Solidity? So I think that's going to be a major thing, because what we found is, because blockchain smart contract, the contract are immutable, your contractor or your developer need to be very good, and they almost always need to be in-house. When we initially started, there was, I think, but based on tally, there's only 3,000 Solidity developer when we started. So there wasn't many choices. But at the same time, you found out there was a lot of contractors, but some of them came in and they were kind of leaving, I wouldn't say, obvious back doors, but which means they were leaving, like, I would say, newbie mistakes, which it could be, intentional or unintentional. Yeah. So I think A is getting a developer down, understand, which team or what are they going to develop. But I think it's really no different than Web2. You got to figure out, you're going to get all your developers in C, or is it Java, or is it Visual Basic? So I think that's core number one. Then from that, of course, you figure out, okay, of the different chain, do you necessarily need to be with one specific chain, or do you want to go with a multi-chain approach? Because in the multi-chain approach, obviously that would lead to the problem of, okay, if I do multi-chain, do I have a two separate ecosystem, or do I actually allow them to cross-chain? So I think our best advice, over the years from, working ourselves to put on a chain and then figure out, gas went so much on ETH, then no longer feasible. Then went to Polygon BSC. We actually ran into the same problem. Polygon BSC is supposed to scale, but when transaction used to cost, let's just say 1 cent, all of a sudden every transactional becomes 10 cents, because Polygon and BSC went up at least 400x, right? Because they started around like less than $4. And same with Polygon, they started at 1 cent. And then they also went all the way up to, dollar, actually maybe $2. So they went up like 200x. But you have to also consider, not only do you have the price of that gas token went up, the giveaway, the competitiveness of that is actually went up as well. So overall, whatever you design, you say, anyone can pay, 0.1 cents. But when it goes up, a combination of two goes up 1,000x, people are still paying $1 during the bull market. So I think that's become a major understanding. So then I think everyone realized that, then the surface of to say, hey, application specific chain, why don't you just run your own chain? If you run your own chain, you don't have to compete with each other. So I think these are the key things which people look at. But I would say start with something which is close to a free essentially the ecosystem. So two right now. One is essentially the ultimate robot. All gas is essentially paid by the people running the chain. So that's entirely free. Just by design, all of the L2 is free. So we run one as well called Chambers, right? Chambers.info, been running that for about 2 years. So our own L2 roll up. The other one we know, which was Scaled Network, so they also run a zero gas fee. However, in either case, the key thing you still have to consider is fundamentally, do you want your own gas token? Because fundamentally, I think that's an entirely different ball game. Because once you have your own gas token, now you will kind of have a greater control of the cost of what you need to pay. What I mean by that is, traditionally when you create a video game, you are creating a game, and the more you scale, the cheaper it becomes, right? AWS and whoever's you get a bigger server, the more you consume, the cheaper the tier. But blockchain, that's exactly different. The more you consume, the more popular chain is, the more expensive you have to pay. But I think the only, so that's, I think, the catch 21, right? So I guess the main thing that we need to then be able to resolve that is, if you were to run your infrastructure, have your own gas token. No, your infrastructure cost is directly now tied to your gas token. So in that case, you can now be more scalable because you're not tied to the fact that price go up so much because you have repository of that gas token. So I would say it's evolution. I don't think people should be running their blockchain from day one, because even for us, right, we've been in the Web3 space for 7 years. It wasn't until we had the opportunity to run L2, we're investing in blockchain almost 4 years ago, but only 2 years ago we started running L2, and then now that we have a lot of experience running the L2, now we're running the L1. So last thing I want to mention is, regardless of which chain you do, right? Because right now, as you guys know, we're now doing our Pentagon game chain, right? So Pentagon chain, I think no matter which chain you choose, one of the other big differentiator for you is people want to look at the overall ecosystem, which means if you're going to deploy NFT, is there an NFT marketplace there? Does it actually work? Is it, audited? So not just the chain itself, but really the broader ecosystem. I think, there's just so many points to talk about this. It can be like an entire article. But also, you will see every single chain say, hey, I have a gaming a grant. But that is super, you have to be super careful, because we've seen so many projects committed to a chain, and then they found out, in order for me to get this grant, I need to spend, I get 100K in grant, but I need to spend 100K in gas in order for me to get 100K. It's like, pay 100K to get 100, like pay 100K to that chain to get 100K back. Well, that's not so much a grant. So quite a few factors. Final one is, I think people should also consider is the region, because what we have seen is chain has become more so of a conglomerate of a project or company, or even sovereigns. So depending on where you want to regionalize, for example, we are part of the Oasis games in that ecosystem. For Japan, they're a very good pick, because they naturally, they're focused there. They do a lot of promotion, in that area. But other we have seen like MENA region, they now have the HAQQ chain that's become popular. So I don't think people have to think that I go to one blockchain, you forever need to stay there, and that's so that you have the flexibility to move around. And that's what we realized as well at the Pentagon Games. So therefore, what we allow people to actually, we recommend to say, hey, pick the chain that's the right size, the right condition for you at this time, for you to put your project to the next step. Because and then once you are ready, then you can also bridge over. So we allow bridging from pen to multiple any application chain in a regulated environment. So really support projects to say, hey, look at, don't always go for the biggest one, because you might spend all your time applying for the grant and not even getting it, or they're getting such a small size because they think, well, you're just another project trying to apply the grant. So pick the right size, right? Pick the right I don't want to call it opponent, but pick the right size fitting. Pick the right house size for the project that you have.
No, absolutely. And I think that brings me to the point of perhaps defining some metrics. Now, I think it's a little complex, because it's such a dynamic space. But I think there's perhaps if there is a third party, right, a neutral third party, which can create some standard metrics across chains. So for instance, they could look at what is the TPS, what's the scalability of that chain, right? What's the liquidity available on that chain, right? What's the daily active users, monthly active users, how is retention happening on that particular chain? Are there what's the percentage of real players versus typically those airdrop farmers that we call, right? What's that percentage? How many transactions are happening? How many live games? So I think for a lot of young game creators out there, if they have perhaps a standardized metric available, I think it might make their job easier, but it's also challenging to maintain the metric because it's dynamic, it's changing all the time. For instance, recently we were talking to a couple of gaming founders, and almost literally every week they were changing their decision on which chain to go on, right? To start with, at least, right? So I think it is a bit confusing, but I think you're right. I think there were some great points that you mentioned in terms of where you are in your journey. Pick a chain based on where you are, and then you're not wedded to them for life. You can move around, and I think that's a great piece of advice that you could perhaps give. And therefore, it brings me to the other to a side question, which is really that perhaps we might and we will see a lot of migration, right? So people start in a particular space, and then they want to migrate to something else. And we're already seeing it. We've already been approached by some chains who say, hey, we want to move from this stack to that stack. So what's your take? I mean, do you think migration is going to become a big thing, going forward, given the fact that there's so much change, so much evolution happening, and so much of new technology coming in?
Yeah. So I have definitely a few forecasts there. But first thing I want to address the question of, I have seen a lot of projects, including the project that I advise for directly, because over the years, because we also run a launch pad, so we actually launch and advise for over 35 different gaming projects. So some of them, did fairly well, and where I see a lot of even, I would say, very veteran team. They're like, oh, today let's go base, right? And then tomorrow's like, oh, BTC is popular as L2, let's go for the core chain.
Yeah.
And oh, that chain is just announced a grant, let's go chase for that. But because I also help quite a bit because in terms of I would say a common BD framework, because part of the advice, because I talk to many different chains to try to secure the games in our ecosystem for different chain. So then I realized a lot of them, they say, hey, we have a grant, and everyone's like, oh, let me put it on that chain. Then because I get to talk to these chain head times, they're like, oh, we're not ready yet. We don't know the condition. So just because you hear news doesn't mean you go chase after it.
Yeah.
Especially I would say for brand new developer, going back to your question, which is you want to just start somewhere solid. You don't want to go and, just, jump around too much because you will find that you haven't really understood yourself well. Because like you earlier said, it's you can kind of move and you're not stuck to married to a specific chain. But I guess another better analogy maybe, different analogies maybe, I think it's okay to date a few people to kind of understand yourself better. What do you like? Right. So, and part of that is when I say date yourself, date to understand yourself better, which means, well, in order for you to deploy it on smart contract, you got to have tools, you got to have the engineer, you got to have database, because Web3, it's not smart contract only. It's actually consists of everything Web2, the database, the API, the backend, the frontend, plus Web3. So I think that's maybe a misnomer. People think Web3 it's a separate thing. Actually, no, Web3 is everything Web2 plus the smart contract and the blockchain. So I think first is deploy on something which, again, I want to mention, part of our ecosystem, even regardless of L2 or L1, you want to be able to work with that so that you don't have to have a lot of upfront investment, which means first project, you may not want to put directly on the ETH because to deploy a contract in ETH is going to maybe cost you $200. So, make sure your technology and product is good. So I think that's foundational what people should be
absolutely.
Oh, and sorry, just to answer your question, I think I did it. The future of it, I think, is there's going to be two things. First of all, a lot of the, for example, what Polygon is doing with CDK was the agri layer. All the Polygon, CDK chain, including ourselves, right? Pentagon Games, the CDK, the Polygon CDK chain, and that is by default natively with an agri layer coming up, compatible to each other chain. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of solid standard bridges I would say almost bridge abstraction. I think in the future, even there could be a possibility, how now we have cloud and intercloud and as a user, you actually don't care what's the background. Right. I think it's possible where L2, a new chain gets spun up and they're being used when new demands require. And if later on they're no longer required, they might be archived somehow. So I think there's going to be definitely more changes to the ecosystem and the consolidation.
And so let me move on to the Pentagon now. And I think you did answer it to some extent, but maybe you have some more points to add. But what were your key drivers, given the fact that you have set up a ZK EVM ecosystem? So what were the drivers for that really?
Yeah, definitely. So as mentioned, we have to work with 13 actually announced working with 13 different chains over the years. We invested in quite a these chains as well. We understand most of the ecosystem, how they're doing their grant condition. We've been running L2. So the major differentiator for us this time is we're also getting a lot of Web 2 attention. So we want to create a regulated framework. So what I mean by that is regulated by age, also regulated by region. So which means we are a permission chain, which means not anyone can deploy anytime. We actually require everything, all the content on our chain, first to be on a different application chain before they can bridge into our chain is a regulated environment. What does that allow? It allows children to own NFT within our ecosystem. So why that's very powerful is because now I have a regulated way, so which means that major project Web 2 are more willing to adopt and put their content on it because they, like for example, if you're Disney, you don't want to have your content there was Mickey Mouse, and then all of a sudden you have a non-safe for work content inside the same zone. So this allows us to regulate that framework, but at the same time, we want to follow a decentralized motto, which means if NFT comes in, if I need to ban it, I don't have to destroy and say, oh, sorry, I'm censoring your content. So we want to not have censorship. So therefore, what we do is when we set up this infrastructure, if something is no longer compliant, they essentially move back to the original chain. So which we don't destroy the asset as well. Come back later, we'll get it reapproved to come back to ecosystem. So our entire metaverse and all of our content in our ecosystem is regulated, with safe. And when I say regulated, not just age, but also by region. I think that was a major differentiator. We must have our own chain so that we can do in a way, we became decentralized with somewhat centralized with permission in a way, but in terms of assets, we're still decentralized because you essentially get to move back one layer up if you're not in a regulated environment.
Okay. So thanks so much, Idon. And so finally, maybe talk a little bit more about your platform, where we are today in terms of, what can be accessed on Pentagon today? What is there any engagement campaign running, and how can people really participate? I think our viewers would be quite happy to hear get some information on that.
Yes, definitely. So number one thing is we aggregated, we acquired two major community. We're able to downvote and win the vote on two OG community. One was called Ethermon or Ethereumon. Other one was called Chain Guardian. For both of them, they originally had their own token. So there will be a form of airdrop campaign to people from that old ecosystem to come on board. So that brings together almost close to 1 million users from Web3. So that's really exciting. But secondly, we have the entire campaign for airdrop upcoming. So which means that people can engage either by social, with people to participate in our incentive testnet. By the way, our testnet went live about 3 weeks ago, of course, when we're together with the Zeeve team that helped us deploy a lot of this. So that's going live. So people able to just get entirely free because it's still on testnet. You get to use the faucet, claim and NFT, purchase and interact with everything there. Play our games. So we actually now have 4 games that's live. Most of them in alpha, but all of them have been developing for almost the past 2 years. So quite a few of the ecosystem game is live. We have quite a few. Everything will be on Pentagon Games website in about a week's time, where people can go and participate in all of this. All of them, you will get achievement in terms of NFT on your wallet. So people can engage there to get airdrops. Last part is we will be in a lot of events. So we'll be having several major activations. We are confirmed for I can't say the name of the show yet, a very major show that's similar to Shark Tank in a way for crypto. You guys might guess what it is. I can't say exactly which show it is. So we're doing a film in there where there will be public participation as well. And last one, we will also be on lots of different launchpads. So yeah, just take a look and check our game ecosystem. And please also our Twitter, which is Pentagon Games XP, to join that, since we'll be doing a selective airdrop in prizes to people.
Right. So thanks so much, Idon. I think that is wonderful. Very exciting times for Pentagon Games. I must say, I'm truly charged up. And for someone like me who's only been 1 year in Web3, I think it's been a great, half an hour that I've spent with you chatting. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our viewers have gained so much as well. So thank you so much, Idon, for your time, and wishing all success to Pentagon Games.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Thomas. See you again soon.
Yeah.